Christmas lights were still glowing when my marriage officially ended. Not quietly, not privately, but at a long table, surrounded by people who were already smiling before the words were even out of his mouth. "We're done," my husband said, like he was ordering dessert. No pause, no regret, just relief. For half a second, nobody spoke. Then his mother laughed. Not the kind of laugh that slips out by accident, the kind that's been held back, enjoyed. His sister followed, then his uncle, then his aunt, soft chuckles, smirks, side glances. I sat there with my hands folded in my lap, staring at the Christmas centerpiece I helped pick out. Pine cones, fake snow, red ribbons. It was supposed to feel warm. It felt like ice. "Well," his sister said, tilting her glass. "Guess that card won't be useful anymore." She nodded toward my purse. Everyone knew exactly what she meant. My husband didn't look at me. He stared at his plate like it might save him from eye contact. That hurt more than the laughter, more than the words. I stood up slowly. I didn't cry. Not yet. I grabbed my purse and walked out while someone behind me asked if anybody wanted more wine. Outside, the cold hit hard. The kind that makes your lungs burn. Christmas music spilled out from shops down the street. People laughing, holding hands, living their lives. I walked with no direction, just away. That's how I ended up in that restaurant. Quiet, almost empty, warm enough to sit still. I ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, and stared at my phone like it had answers. When the waiter came back with the bill, I handed him my card without thinking. He glanced down, then stopped. His eyes went from the card to my face, then back to the card again. His expression changed, completely. And in that moment, something shifted. Not in the room, in my life. Because what he saw on that card was something my in-laws never bothered to look at. His mother smiled like she'd won something. His sister raised her glass. Someone actually said, "Finally." And none of them would ever laugh the same way again. I didn't always know they looked down on me. At first, it was subtle. The kind of stuff you second-guess yourself over. Little pauses when I spoke, polite smiles that never reached their eyes. Questions that sounded harmless but weren't. "So, what exactly do you do again?" "Oh, that's nice." Followed by silence. At family dinners, conversations would drift toward money like it was magnetic. Investments, startups, property deals. They threw numbers around like confetti. I learned early to stay quiet. My husband, back then, used to tell me, "They're just like that. Don't take it personal." And I believed him. Because believing him was easier than admitting the truth. His mother had a way of complimenting that felt like an insult wrapped in a bow. "You're so simple. I wish I could be satisfied with less like you." His sister was worse. She'd smile wide and say things just loud enough for the table to hear. "You know, if you married someone else, you'd probably be struggling right now." Then she'd laugh. Like it was a joke. And everyone would join in. I learned to laugh too. Because not laughing felt like weakness. They never said I wasn't good enough. They didn't have to. They treated me like a temporary guest in a life they owned. Every holiday, every gathering, every celebration, I was reminded where I ranked. Below them. Always below them. Christmas that year was supposed to be different. At least, that's what my husband said. "We'll keep it low key," he told me. "Just dinner." But the table was full. Wine was flowing. And they were in rare form. His uncle made a comment about dead weight in relationships. His aunt laughed and added, "Some people are just lucky to marry up." I felt every word land. Sharp, precise, deliberate. I looked at my husband, waiting for him to say something. Anything. He didn't. That's when I realized something painful. They weren't saying these things around him. They were saying them for him. Because when the moment came, when he finally said he wanted a divorce, no one was shocked. They were prepared. Finally. Like I was a problem that had taken too long to fix. I remember the way my face felt. Hot, tight, heavy. I wanted to disappear. But instead, I stood there. Took it. Because walking away felt like confirming everything they believed about me. And even as they laughed, even as my marriage collapsed in front of them, they still didn't see me. Not really. They saw what they wanted to see. Someone small. Someone dependent. Someone replaceable. They had no idea how wrong they were. Because humiliation has a way of doing one of two things to a person. It either breaks you, or it sharpens you. And that night, sitting alone in that quiet restaurant, with a card in my hand that no one at that table ever bothered to understand, I was about to realize which one it had done to me. The waiter didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, holding the receipt, like he needed a second to reset. Then he looked at me again. This time differently, not curious, not confused, respectful. "Mom," he said quietly, leaning in so no one else could hear. "Is this your card?" I nodded. "Once." He exhaled through his nose, almost like a laugh, but not a funny one, more like disbelief. "I've seen this before," he said. "Not often." That was it. That was all he said. But something in his tone hit me harder than anything my in-laws had said all night. Because for the first time in hours, someone wasn't looking at me like I was disposable. He walked away to process the payment. I sat there alone, staring at the table, my thoughts spiraling. Was this really my life now? Divorced, rejected, walking out of a Christmas dinner with nowhere to go. I pulled my coat tighter around myself. My phone buzzed. A text from my husband. "I'll send the papers next week. Let's keep this civil." Civil. Like what just happened was a polite disagreement and not a public execution. I didn't reply. I couldn't. Instead, I stared at the reflection in the window. Mascara slightly smudged, eyes tired, shoulders slumped. I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. Had I really let myself shrink this much? I thought about all the times I stayed quiet to keep the peace. All the jokes I laughed at so things wouldn't get awkward. All the moments I convinced myself I was being mature. Maybe I wasn't being mature. Maybe I was just afraid. Afraid of being alone. Afraid of starting over. Afraid of proving them right. The waiter came back and placed the receipt down gently. "No rush," he said. "Take your time." He didn't need to say anything else. That small kindness cracked something open inside me. When I finally stood up to leave, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was my mother-in-law. "We'll arrange a time for you to pick up your things. Don't make it complicated." "No, sorry. No. Are you okay?" "Just instructions." I stepped back outside into the cold. The rain had started again, light but steady. The street was quieter now. Most people were home. I walked past houses lit up with Christmas trees. Past families gathered inside laughing. Each step felt heavier than the last. I wondered if this was it. If this was the moment my life officially split into before and after. And somewhere between the ache in my chest and the numbness in my hands, a question formed. If they already believed I was nothing, what did I actually have left to lose? I didn't go to a friend's place. Didn't call anyone to vent. Didn't post anything dramatic or send a long message explaining my side. I went to a small hotel on the edge of town. The kind of place people don't notice. Clean enough, quiet enough. I sat on the bed with my coat still on and stared at the wall for a long time. No TV. No music. Just the hum of the heater and my own breathing. That's when the noise in my head finally got loud. Every comment they'd ever made replayed itself. Every look, every laugh. Every time I told myself, "It's fine. It doesn't matter." It mattered. I wasn't angry yet. I was exhausted. Exhausted from explaining myself, from trying to earn respect from people who never planned on giving it. I pulled my wallet out and stared at the card again. The same card the waiter had looked at twice. I thought about how many times I'd hidden that part of my life. Not because it was wrong, but because I didn't want to make anyone uncomfortable. I remembered my husband once telling me, "You don't need to act so independent around my family. It's not a competition." I believed him. So I dimmed myself, softened my edges. Let them assume whatever made them feel bigger. Lying there, I finally admitted something I hadn't let myself say out loud before. They didn't leave me because I was weak. They left me because I stopped pretending I was. And that realization didn't come with anger. It came with clarity. I sat up and took a slow breath. Not the shaky kind. The kind you take when you've made a decision. I wasn't going to beg for dignity anymore. Wasn't going to chase apologies that would never come. I didn't need revenge in the loud way they probably expected. I didn't need to prove anything to them. I just needed to stop hiding. Outside, the rain tapped against the window. Steady. Patient. I checked my phone one last time before turning it face down on the nightstand. No messages that mattered. No voices I needed to hear. For the first time since that dinner, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt intentional. And somewhere in that quiet room, with nothing but time and truth, I began planning a life that didn't include their permission. They thought Christmas night was the end of me. They were wrong. It was the last night I ever played small. The next morning didn't come with motivation. It came with a headache, stiff shoulders, and a quiet room that felt too big. No dramatic soundtrack. No sudden confidence, just reality. I checked out of the hotel early and drove to a short-term rental I'd booked the night before. Nothing fancy. Bare walls. Cheap furniture. A place meant to be temporary. It fit. The first few days were messy. Not emotionally loud, just heavy. I cried in the shower so the sound wouldn't carry. Ate standing up because sitting down made everything feel too real. Slept at odd hours. But something else started to happen too. I stopped explaining myself to people who weren't there. No calls to my ex. No updates to his family. No defending my choices. I handled the paperwork quietly. Lawyer, documents, signatures. Every time I saw his name, my chest tightened, but I didn't react. I reminded myself of something simple. Pain doesn't need an audience to be real. I set routines, small ones, wake up, shower, work. No matter how I felt. Discipline wasn't loud. It didn't feel powerful at first. It felt boring. But boring was stable. And stable was something I hadn't had in a long time. At night, when the loneliness crept in, I went back to my laptop. Back to the parts of my life I'd pushed into the background for years. The skills I downplayed. The projects I paused. The potential I kept on mute so nobody would feel threatened. I didn't tell anyone I was rebuilding. I didn't need witnesses. There were moments I wanted to reach out, to ask if they ever felt bad, if they ever missed me. I never did. Because every time I imagined their faces, I remembered the laughter, and that was enough to keep me focused. Weeks passed. The pain didn't vanish, it changed shape. It stopped screaming and started working. Late nights turned productive, early mornings became normal. And slowly, quietly, I started becoming someone they wouldn't recognize anymore. Not because I was trying to impress them, but because I was finally honest with myself. They thought the divorce broke me. What they never understood was this: I didn't lose direction when I lost them. I found it. No one clapped when things started going right, no one noticed. And that was exactly how I needed it. I kept my circle small: work, home, a couple of people who knew how to mind their business. I stopped sharing plans before they were real. Stopped announcing goals like they were promises. Instead, I let results do the talking. There were setbacks. Days when nothing moved forward. Moments when the weight of everything tried to pull me back under. But I didn't panic. I'd already survived being laughed at. Everything else felt manageable. I remember one night, working late, when I caught myself smiling at my screen, not because I'd won anything yet, but because I was capable again. Capable of standing alone. Capable of choosing myself without guilt. That card stayed in my wallet. I didn't flash it. Didn't use it to prove anything. It was a reminder. Not of status. Of restraint. Months passed. My name started showing up in rooms I wasn't physically in. Quiet conversations. Private emails. Opportunities that didn't need announcements. I kept my head down. Success came in increments. Not explosions. The kind you only notice when you stop and look back. Sometimes I wondered what they were doing. If they ever thought about that Christmas night. If my ex ever replayed it in his head. Then I'd close that thought and return to my work, because curiosity about them felt like regression. The strangest part was how calm I felt. Not numb. Calm. Like I'd finally aligned with something real. I wasn't chasing revenge. I was building distance. Distance from the version of myself that needed approval. Distance from people who confused loudness with value. And in that space, something solid formed. Confidence that didn't need validation. Power that didn't need to announce itself. They still thought they knew me. That assumption was going to cost them. It happened on a Tuesday. Nothing dramatic about the day itself. No holidays. No memories attached to it. Just an email that landed in my inbox while I was halfway through my coffee. I recognized the company name instantly. My ex's family business. The same one they used to brag about at every dinner. The same one they treated like a last name. I didn't open it right away. I stared at the screen, letting the moment settle. Not fear. Not excitement. Recognition. I already knew why they were reaching out. Because by then, my name had weight. Quiet weight. The email was polite. Almost respectful. They wanted a meeting. A consultation. They mentioned urgency. I leaned back in my chair and laughed under my breath, not because it was funny, because it was predictable. I agreed to the meeting, kept my response short, professional, neutral, no emotion, no history. When the day came, I walked into that building alone. Same lobby. Same polished floors. Different energy. The receptionist looked up my name and smiled like it mattered. I was early, they were not. When they finally walked in, it took a second for recognition to land. My ex froze first, then his sister, then his mother. Their faces went through it in real time. Surprise, confusion, calculation. No one laughed. No one spoke. I stood up calmly and offered my hand. Good to see you, I said. It wasn't a lie. And it wasn't friendly. It was controlled. We sat down. Talked numbers, strategy, outcomes. They listened. Actually listened. At one point, his mother leaned forward and said my name carefully. Like she was testing it. I noticed something then. For the first time, I wasn't waiting for their reaction. They were waiting for mine. And as the meeting went on, the balance shifted completely. They needed what I had built. And I had no intention of reminding them where it came from. Because the most effective revenge doesn't revisit the past. It lets the present speak. They tried to act normal. Like history was a rumor we'd all agreed to forget. Coffee was offered. Small talk attempted. I declined both. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. This wasn't a reunion. It was business. They explained the problem. A situation that had been bleeding money for months. Deals falling apart. Reputation slipping in places they couldn't afford to lose. I listened. Really listened. The same way I used to listen at family dinners when they talked over me, like I was furniture. Only this time, silence was my advantage. When they finished, the room stayed quiet. Not awkward, expectant. They were waiting for reassurance. For confidence. For rescue. I gave them honesty. Calm. Precise. Unemotional. I outlined what needed to change. What would cost them. What would save them. No sugarcoating. No ego, just truth. My ex kept nodding like agreement was instinct. Like he hadn't once signed papers that erased my last name from his life. At one point, he tried to soften the mood. You've really grown, he said. I looked at him for a second longer than necessary. I had to, I replied. Nothing else. That was enough. They accepted my terms. Every single one. Not because they wanted to. Because they didn't have a better option. As I stood to leave, his mother thanked me. Actually thanked me. The woman who once laughed while I stood soaked in rain, holding my dignity together with shaking hands. I nodded. No smile. No bitterness. Gratitude didn't move me anymore. Outside, the air felt lighter. Not because I'd beaten them. But because I no longer needed anything from them. The check came later. More money than I'd ever held at one time. I didn't celebrate. I paid off debts quietly. Invested carefully. Kept moving forward. And then, without planning it, I ran into the waiter again. Different restaurant. Different night. He recognized me instantly. You're the Christmas lady, he said, smiling. I laughed. For real this time. We talked for a few minutes. Nothing heavy. Before I left, I paid his tip in cash. More than generous. He looked at me like he wanted to say something meaningful. But he didn't have to. Some moments don't need words. That night, I stood at my window and watched the city lights. No anger, no triumph, just stillness. They had their lesson, I had my life. And the funny thing about quiet payoffs, they echo longer than applause. Power doesn't announce itself. It settles in. I didn't change my routine after that. No sudden upgrades. No flashy signals. If anything, I moved even quieter. People assume revenge looks loud, public, messy. But real dominance is invisible unless you're looking for it. The contract ended successfully. Their business stabilized. Their reputation recovered. And then they tried to keep me close. Invitations followed. Casual messages. A holiday card I never opened. I ignored all of it. Because proximity was never the prize. Freedom was. One afternoon, months later, I saw my ex across the street outside a cafe. He was laughing with someone, but his eyes drifted toward me. Recognition hit him like a delayed echo. He hesitated. I didn't. I kept walking. No pause. No look back. That moment said everything. He wasn't invisible to me. He was irrelevant. And that's a different kind of ending. The work continued. Bigger clients. Higher stakes. My voice carried weight in rooms I once would have felt unqualified to enter. Not because I demanded respect. Because I'd earned it in silence. Sometimes I thought about that night in the rain. Not with pain. With distance. Like remembering a storm from a warm room. The girl who stood there shaking, begging for decency. She didn't disappear. She evolved. She learned when to speak. And when silence cuts deeper, people like my ex's family still believed in power plays. In leverage, in image. They never realized the moment they lost. It wasn't when they needed me. It was when I stopped needing them. Because needing someone gives them a vote in your life. I revoked that privilege. And here's the truth: most people don't like to admit revenge doesn't feel like joy. It feels like closure, like setting something heavy down and realizing your hands are finally free. No speech. No showdown. Just a life built so solid that the past can't knock it over. That's calm dominance. And it's undefeated. Some nights, when the city goes quiet, I still think about that Christmas. Not the pain. Not the rain. The moment. The exact second everything shifted. Back then, I thought humiliation was the end of me. That being laughed at meant I'd lost. I was wrong. That night didn't break me, it stripped me. Stripped away illusions. Expectations. The need to be chosen by people who couldn't see value unless it served them. They thought they were sending me away. What they actually did was release me. I never confronted them. Never asked for apologies. Never told my side of the story, because the truth didn't need defending. It was visible. In my work, my posture, my peace. People ask sometimes how I changed so much. I don't explain. I don't say names. I don't reopen doors that closed for a reason. I just say, I learned when to stop begging. And that's usually enough. Some losses feel like theft at first. Like something precious was taken from you. But later, you realize it was a trade. You lost comfort. You gained clarity. You lost belonging. You gained self-respect. They still live loud. Still chase approval. Still confuse control with strength. I live quiet. And quiet lasts. The waiter probably forgot my face by now. That's fine. He wasn't the miracle. He was the witness. To the moment someone saw worth where others mocked it. And once you experience that kind of recognition, you never settle for less again. So, if you're listening to this, feeling rejected, humiliated, pushed out into the cold, understand this. The night they laugh is often the night you stop asking for permission. And when that happens, you don't come back louder. You come back untouchable.